Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. I realized that when I was a faculty member, I actually used to look forward to these talks that Barbara had organized in the past and prior to her, Tom Mary and John Meddings and so on. And so I thought that it was probably time to reboot a little update. We haven't had one since 2017, and these are definitely very challenging times. I haven't always gotten an opportunity to meet with everybody as a new chair. So although it'll be a one-way conversation for a big part of this, I'm really hoping to be able to leave quite a bit of time if possible for questions. And if we don't have time today for questions, then we can have a little organized sort of just get together to address any questions that come up after today's presentation. I'm going to try and give information predominantly around our academic mission, but like I said, mostly I want to hear from you, and so I look forward to that. So the objectives today, the educator in me still has to come out with objectives, is basically to provide an overview of the current departmental leadership structure. I know we've shared a lot of that by memos and emails and things, but I thought it was important just to put it all together and give you an overview. Outline some of the challenges, but the opportunities that the department currently has across all 4 care pillars. And, you know, I want to focus more on what's coming rather than what's been. But of course, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And then lastly, discuss the plan for developing priorities, both at the institutional and faculty level, but more importantly, how that fits within our departmental context. And I apologize if some of what I'm going to say is repetition, but I'll try and put it in departmental context. So repetition from either the president's addresses or from the dean's addresses. So first and foremost, I just wanted to start by reminding us that we do have a well set out academic mission. And, you know, despite all the changes and everything that's coming at us, the uncertainties, our mission and our vision remains unchanged. And that is to improve the health and healthcare of our current and future generations through excellence and innovation in education, research, and clinical care. So whenever, you know, I feel frustrated, so I've been in this job now for 5.5 to 6 months, and there are definitely times that are challenging and there are tough decisions to be made at times. I always come back to this. And so I just wanted to set this as a reminder that, you know, during these challenging times, just always come back to where we want to be as a Department of Medicine. We've had quite a few changes. You've had to experience quite a few changes in departmental leadership structure over the past 5.5 months, starting with myself. But you know, when we were moving forward with sort of developing the immediate leadership team, I wanted to have a balance of individuals that have corporate knowledge, if you will, as well as individuals that would inject some new ideas and new thoughts into our immediate leadership structure. So that's sort of the balance I've tried to strike. And the other part of it is also, those of you who know me know that I'm a clinician educator. I come with a very different skill set than Barbara did. And so I thought it was very important to make sure that my leadership structure was made up of individuals that would complement my abilities and skills. And so that's what you'll see with what we've put forward so far. So this is, if you've never seen this, this is our Department of Medicine sort of leadership governance structure. It's a little bit of a complicated slide, and I will go through it in a minute, but predominantly as chair, I do identify with two sort of separate institutions, if you will. There's the university academic part, and then of course as deputy department head, there is also accountabilities to our clinical partners, which includes AHS. And so to that end, I have deputies that represent both sides. So Adrian has a ton of institutional knowledge, and I think his skill set is very well sort of situated to continue as deputy chair, and he very graciously agreed to continue during these uncertain times. And so he remains my academic deputy chair. And then I have asked as an interim, Elaine Yakishin to take on the role of deputy department head, which was my old role. And again, just in the vein of wanting to complement my skills, which are predominantly in inpatient medicine, I wanted somebody who had strong skills as an ambulatory practitioner. And so she's also taken on the role of ambulatory lead. And then of course we have our division directors, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail here. So first of all, the associate chairs. So as I mentioned, Adrian and Elaine, and then we have their complementary roles in our assistant chair and our medical affairs manager with Francois and Anto respectively. And you've all had a chance to meet with them and speak with them, I'm sure. And then again, in the vein of wanting to complement my skills, I wanted somebody who clearly is an outstanding accomplished researcher who has amazing ideas. And so once again, Evangelos very graciously agreed to stay on his role as associate chair research with a view that he would be taking on more responsibilities than perhaps he had in the past, particularly relating to setting the direction with regards to our research initiatives, but also with regards, evaluating our PhDs and clinician scientists. And so moving forward, that's going to be a big part of his role. And then Vijay had been on the executive previously as associate chair education, but again, you know, with a vein of wanting to complement what I bring to the table, we felt that his skills would be better served in evaluating faculty development or developing faculty development rather than staying with just education. We have amazing medical directors within education. So we've got our postgraduate director in Stephen Cates, and we've got an undergraduate director in Steve Caldwell, who are pretty independent and need very little sort of oversight and overview. And so Vijay's role basically complements that. And Vijay will talk a little bit more about it in a minute. And then finally, we brought in Jacques because I felt that Adrian really needed a little bit of a reprieve from his role in finance. He's been doing it for a very long time. He's done an outstanding job, and also with a view to developing leaders and succession planning. And so Jacques very kindly agreed to take on the role of Associate Chair Finance, and we're doing an overlap period as Jacques is learning from Adrian. So with that in mind, Adrian has actually taken on the role of Faculty Affairs. And what that means is his role is really around helping with leadership reviews, helping to set strategy, and developing sort of that piece related to academic development. So that's currently how things have shaped up. And then of course, our division directors and our section chiefs. So we have had quite a bit of stability lately in these roles. Now, there are a few individuals that are coming up for leadership reviews and coming up to potentially either finishing their second term or starting their second term. So we're slowly working through our way through that. But we've had a nice sort of stable group of leaders across the divisions. And I cannot tell you enough how dedicated these individuals are to making sure that their faculty members are well represented and are developing. Early on in the pandemic, when I took over as chair, it became very clear to me that communications by email and by memos and things weren't really landing very well. And so around April, we started to gather on Friday afternoons. So these individuals were basically giving up their Friday evenings. We would meet around 4 o'clock. I'm saying we would, we've continued to do so, but previously we were meeting on a weekly basis. And, you know, again, representing what your concerns are and identifying to me what people were concerned about and where the challenges are and so on. We've continued to meet subsequently. We've now reduced it to every 2 weeks and then as needed. And then, of course, there are our site chiefs. So, you know, keeping in mind that we're a zonal program and we have a large majority of our clinical faculty at the other sites, it's absolutely imperative that we understand within the department structure what's going on with that other part of our faculty. And so I've tried as much as possible to meet regular with our site chiefs, at least remaining informed in terms of what's going on at the other sites. Very early on in pandemic planning, this was extremely important, but with Connect Care coming along and other challenges that are going to continue coming along, I think it's important. We've developed a bit of a group that meets on a regular basis to represent all the sites and programs and so on. I'll just give a shout out to Ron Demant, who sort of stepped in as interim university site chief. We are going to be starting a search and selection for that position. But I'd just like to thank him for taking that on and thank all of the site chiefs for the amazing, amazing work they've been doing. And it's been a challenge, particularly, you know, when you think about an entire hospital shutting down and a unit at the Grey Nuns Hospital having its challenges with COVID. It's been a tremendous amount of work for them. So in terms of how this all fits together, we do have, you know, a little bit of a leadership structure, and there's a few positions that I've identified where, you know, I think we do need to have some representation. And so I'll be sort of putting out some memos relating to that in the near future and speaking to all of you to identify individuals that have an interest in these areas, whether it's related to equity, diversity, or to clinical research or to the CME role. We meet on a regular basis. So I meet with the executive every 2 weeks. We have our academic steering committee, which meets every 2 months. And then we have our zone clinical committee, which meets the alternate 2 months. With a vein to trying to reduce the amount of meeting time. We've kept it at that for now. And then of course there are the every 2 week meetings that I mentioned with our division directors. So we do have regular forums where we, if nothing else, are able to update each other, have conversations about their challenges, about what's going on, and just exchange ideas. You know, having said all of this, I would just like to take a minute to acknowledge the silent leaders within our department. So even though their names may not show up here, and you will know who you are, I have knocked on a few doors or reached out to a few individuals, either paged them or called them to get some sage advice and direction when I've had, you know, moments of uncertainty. And so, you know, make no mistake, there might be certain names that show up on this list, but we have a tremendous number of leaders in our department, whether they provide direct advice and feedback to me personally, or they're taking on mentorship roles. It's really been gratifying to see the level of commitment and leadership within this department. So I'd just like to take a minute to thank all those individuals. So I'm now going to take a little bit of time to go through sort of the four care pillars in terms of identifying some of the challenges, but more importantly, some of the opportunities that have opened up with regards to those pillars, and just try and identify sort of what's coming in the near future, whether it's this year or over the next few years. So starting off with clinical, we all know that COVID has pretty much monopolized our time with regards to our clinical mission over the last 6 months since we went into the lockdown phase in mid-March. And it's resulted in some very significant difficulties for individuals, for households. It's put stress on our healthcare system. And then subsequently, we know that there have been challenges related to relaunch, whether those challenges were in the ambulatory setting or as we've sort of recognized that individuals that maybe didn't present right in the midst of the lockdown took their time and are now presenting at this point. And we know that the inpatient side has been just overwhelmed in terms of volumes. So lots and lots of challenges that have come on. And we know that there are hard times coming. We heard from Dr. Hinshaw last week that there is the next wave coming. And there's, you just have to follow the Alberta MOH page to see that our curve continues to go up and up and up more. And as school restarted, we sent out a memo earlier in the week just to provide some simple guidelines for people because there's so much confusion and concern around, what if my child is sent home sick? And I know already some faculty members who've had children in classes that have been identified with positive cases. So, we recognize that, and hopefully, we can continue to support each other through that. The one thing that I have stressed over and over again to our division directors and our leaders is that we've got to have backup rosters. Backup rosters just take away that little bit of stress that that comes with as soon as a person is not able to cope with something, rather than them having to go through multiple hurdles. Just having somebody on the backup roster to call on, it just allays a ton of fear and anxiety. So please backup rosters, and backup rosters not just for your own services, but just keeping in mind that some of the inpatient services may become overwhelmed and we may have to look at other ways of doing things. So just keeping that in mind. There have been a number of opportunities that have been presented as a result of COVID, and I would say virtual care is one of them. So, with regards to virtual care, I think it's been absolutely amazing how individuals have just stepped up, identified ways of doing things. And I know there still remain challenges, and we're going to try and address some of those in upcoming medical grand rounds in terms of how to make virtual care more seamless and easier and sort of make it more part of our day if possible. The other major challenge, of course, has been Connect Care. We forget, it seems like decades ago that we had wave one, and that was the thing that we were the most anxious about at the university site. But it's now been almost a year, and we're still working on optimization, and we recognize that it's not perfect, but we've now moved on to the next stage, which is clinical inquiry. And whether it's inquiry of your own practice to identify the types of patients you're looking after or your outcomes, or it's inquiry related to quality improvement projects that you could be taking on, or research projects, or what have you. So we've now moved on to that next phase. And those of you that would have seen a memo that went out advertising clinical inquiry clinics that have been started. And there's lots of other supports. If you go into my learning link, there are various courses and things that you can take to identify all the possible ways of reporting, whether it's in time time reporting with workbenches or previous reporting with crystal reports or what have you. So there's lots and lots of opportunity there. The major challenge for us, of course, is going to be as we go forward with wave 2 and wave 3. So wave 2 is the Sturgeon site and the suburban sites, which is going to have a huge impact on our flow. Just like with when the university site went live and the other sites supported the slowdown of activities, the same thing will need to happen through wave 2. And then wave 3 with the Royal Alec, which is a very large site going forward. We anticipate major challenges for the non-go live sites because of volumes as the other site sort of tampers down through that initial 2 to 3 week period. So we've got to be prepared for that and identify again backup rosters and all the rest of it that may be required related to that. The last thing that I'm just going to identify here in terms of clinical challenges, not to say that these are the only ones, but just that as a department that are really coming fast and furious, is the AHS review. So as you all know, the Ernst & Young report was responded to by AHS and it was submitted in early August. We just received an update this morning that that report, although it's been submitted, hasn't really been reviewed by government yet, and they don't anticipate it being reviewed until about early October. So that leaves us in a little bit of a lurch because there are a few things that are unknowns. For example, the Z codes that you know well about, which had been temporarily halted, but on paper are scheduled to go forward. There is anxieties around the sunshine list. So lots and lots of anxieties related to some of the issues that have been identified. But from what I understand, by mid-October, we will have a formal outline of what the response is to the review and hopefully just move forward with that. I mean, there are no questions in my mind as somebody who does quite a bit of inpatient care that there are efficiencies to be gained. And so I think that we need to identify those, focus on those, and where there are things that you know we need to call out as physicians that are putting our patients at risk, that are putting our mission at risk, then we need to be leaders and call those things out. And I welcome those opportunities, and I'm always happy to take forward any issues that arise. A big part of this that is impacting our department is physician compensation. And so related to that, I think I've already mentioned at various venues, but we have put forward a clinical ARP expression of interest for the Department of Medicine that crosses across various divisions. It's not to say that I anticipate that it's going to sort of be accepted and move forward at rapid pace, but the government has signaled that they are interested in clinical ARPs, and I think we need to be in the front line in terms of moving our requirements forward. And so just, you know, I'll keep you informed in terms of where things are going with all of that, and you know, we'll identify where the opportunities present themselves. Now, these are only some of the challenges that you know I'm putting forward. I know there's many more. The old ones related to our patients becoming more complex with multiple comorbidities have definitely not gone anywhere or related to our aging population, but these are just sort of some of the immediate challenges that we've identified. So I now want to move forward with identifying sort of some of the issues around research. Again, you know, this has been a major area of challenge since around mid-March as so-called non-essential research was basically shut down both in the lab as well as on the clinical side, and posed a lot of challenges, a lot of jumping hoops that I know our investigators had to go through, a lot of challenges related to funding agencies, and funding being sort of either paused or halted or reversed in some situations. And so I know that that's been a major challenge for our faculty. But once again, I have to tell you, I am absolutely astonished with how our faculty has stepped up where we needed them to. So first of all, I would be remiss in not acknowledging that a couple of individuals were inducted into the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences today. So congratulations to them. But you know, it's just a testament to the fact that our faculty just continues to do whatever needs to be done to recognize our academic mission. So to that end, first of all, I just need to acknowledge Evangelos and Eleni for putting these slides together. Evangelos couldn't be here to present them himself, but I just wanted to show you. So obviously, this is a slide outlining our Department of Medicine specific research revenue divided up by various revenue agencies, but you can see that Tri-Council funding is represented there as well. And for obviously the Department of Medicine, the largest is CIHR, but there is a little bit of NSERC as well. And despite the fact that for 2021, we are only representing here funding that has been secured to August, you can see that, you know, we are already doing well. So I won't expand on that too much, recognizing that a lot of this is very COVID specific. We did just get the spring results released for 2020. And we were again, had a significant amount of success there. And so you can see that we're on track to continue to grow our research revenue. So how does that compare to the rest of the faculty? This depicts sort of where the Department of Medicine stands, and I'll just highlight that obviously physical medicine and rehab should be falling into the Department of Medicine, but this is a vagary of how the faculty still forgets to remember that physical medicine and rehab is part of our department. But you can see that, you know, compared to the rest of the faculty, that once again, we're standing strong in terms of our ability to be able to secure funding. And then in terms of education, you know, despite the shutdowns and then the challenges with relaunch and being able to do in-person work and all the rest of it, our department still continues to shine in terms of graduate education. So this is a slide depicting graduate student scholarships, and you know, it doesn't specifically reflect the number of graduate students, because of course we have a lot more than what's depicted here, but it just speaks to the level of our graduate students. And then even on the clinical trial side, so you'll see we managed to get the current 2021 numbers for clinical trials activity, which obviously would only depict between April and August. But even that, despite being on a shutdown and then the challenges with relaunch, we're still on track to, you know, at least having a significant presence in the clinical trials area as well. We have identified that this has been quite a challenge for a number of our faculty members. And so just moving forward in terms of talking about opportunities, this is going to be an area that we've formed a working group to look at how we can maximize this a little bit better than perhaps we have in the past. And then, of course, there's the current and new chairs, endowed chairs that continue, that we currently have within the department and that we're going to be applying for going forward. So we currently within the department hold 3 Tier 1 CRC chairs, 3 Tier 2 chairs. And unfortunately for this cycle, although the announcement hasn't been released yet, there's only going to be 1 Tier 1 chair provided to the faculty and 3 Tier 2 chairs. And I expect that we're going to be quite competitive in that competition. And then we've got quite a bit of funding with regards to our other endowed chairs, which we continue working on. And there's been at least a few individuals who have been reappointed, who've been reappointed to those endowed chairs. What's been really, I guess I'll say, an opportunity for me has been meeting with all of the faculty members that I've started meeting with for ARO reports, and seeing the impactful publications that have gone forward over the past year, but also what they're expecting to move forward with in the coming year. So it's really been just a pleasure to meet with people and hear about all of this. So I think, you know, it just speaks to the amazing work that goes on quietly without a lot of fanfare or ado. And it just continues to push our mission forward. Education. So I put this slide up because for those who don't know, this is something that I was made aware of recently. One of our neurology residents prepared this little sketch and submitted it to one of the top neurology journals, and it was actually accepted for publication for their front page. So this was Kaylin Purdy, and this was shared with me, and I thought, this is pretty cool. Our neurology residents are going to be on the cover of a major neurology journal. So I thought I would just share that with you. But this just speaks to sort of the level of versatility that our learners have shown in this COVID era. So, you know, a lot of our programs did go forward with CBD launch in July of 2019, and a number of programs are preparing to go forward in July, 2020, and a lot are also going forward for 2021. So this continues to evolve, and you know, I know it was identified as a major challenge for us in the past and continues to be a challenge in some areas, but I have just been really impressed with how our program directors have embraced this challenge, and faculty members have stepped up, whether it's as competence committee chairs or academic advisors or whatever has been needed. And we continue to be a leader across the country in terms of CBD. And then, of course, the challenges related to COVID. So we had to shift very quickly with regards to a number of issues, whether it was undergraduate students being pulled and alternative curriculum being developed for them, or our postgraduate learning happening in a different format, postgraduate assessment as well as undergraduate assessment happening in a different way, and then of course interviewing happening in a different way. And throughout all of that, our learners and our program directors have adapted. They've done whatever needed to be done and just gone forward with the work. And so I think that needs to be celebrated. They've developed a lot of key learnings from that and are looking forward to sharing those learnings. So I talked a little bit about VJ's portfolio and faculty development. And I felt that, you know, given that we're in a different time and it's really quite challenging for our faculty in terms of, you know, navigating the new reality. Vijay, I thought, was well set up to sort of lead this portfolio, and he's already brought in some really, I think, very forward-thinking ideas. So I'm going to hand it over to Vijay, and he's actually going to talk about those.
Thank you, Narmin. All right, so as Narmin mentioned, we've had a change in our leadership. So what I was last year, the Associate Chair of Education, and then with Bill Defoe retiring, Norm and I had a long discussion. We decided these should be combined into one role. And a lot of that comes as a testament to the leadership of Stephen Cates and Steve Caldwell, who do a phenomenal job in their roles. So in terms of the educational mandate that will continue, part of it is giving oversight to Stephen and Steve, although they honestly don't need a lot of guidance. But when the time comes in terms of helping with selection of the next directors for these portfolios, there's still a role for an Associate Chair of Education to represent the department at various activities, like I was sitting at a wellness discussion last week. And as well, I'm working with Narmin on the various continued professional development things. Unfortunately, we did have an AM Edwards talk for the spring, but of course with COVID that got put on hold, and we are looking to reschedule that and looking at the future of the grand rounds, which Narmin has taken over and done a fantastic job, but this is only a temporary solution for now. We will be looking at ongoing future plans. And then in terms of the faculty development mandate, which actually takes most of my job, is working on things like new faculty orientations, the academic mentorship program, and sort of re-looking at and reconceptualizing the academic learning series. So the academic learning series previously used to be a set curriculum, and the expectation was a mandatory of attendance of 8 sessions during the assistant professor years. And so this year we are reconceptualizing how we would do this. Now, this is a draft that we're still working through. So the thought would be, and again, this is mandatory for assistant professors, but of course, a lot of these topics will meet the needs of other faculty. So we'd encourage you that as you see emails come out to check these out. But the core topics would be, of course, tenure and promotion. We have a new series of working with support staff that will be running this coming March, as well as medical legal pitfalls, which we've run several times in the past. I'm proposing a time management session. It's something that we feel both in the department as well as FOMD wide, both at junior faculty, but as well as more experienced faculty, having a refresher on certain principles. I continue to offer the clinical teaching workshop across the FOMD. But we wanted to make it explicit, if you're a new hire in an MD, you should check this out. But if you're a PhD, and we do have quite a few of those, we would want to hook you up with CTL for classroom teaching. And we really do feel strongly everyone at these levels should get at least once observed their teaching, be it in the clinical or the classroom, depending on your portfolio. And then after this, we divide it up into 3 tracks. So thinking of our clinically focused, and that can be AMHSP on the academic or clinical, or fee-for-service track, really plugging you into the EPIC workshops as well as other offerings. And I'm actually liaising with our FOMD faculty development wide on what those things can be, like leadership opportunities. For the clinician educator track, I'll be developing an educational scholarship workshop. And Bruce and I used to give the How to Get Promoted as a Clinician Educator workshop, and we'll continue offering that in a modified format, as well as there's other offerings from the FOMD faculty development that I sit on. And then finally, in the clinician scientist track, across the FOMD, this has been identified as an area where we need to support our researchers who have smaller portfolios, those 30% and less. Obviously, those who come through a PhD, postdoc, have already secured grants. Those are the ones that certainly we don't need to support to the same because they have great mentorship, and Evangelist's portfolio is fantastic for that. But we did still feel there may be an area for some of our faculty, or even if you're a clinician educator getting into research, where you could be supported. A lot of this stuff will be actually FOMD-wise type offerings, but we want to plug people into that. So that's all I had to say, and I'm going to pass it back over to Narmin.
Thanks, Vijay. I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome some of our new faculty since I think this is a list from July 2019. of new faculty that have joined us. So welcome. They're well represented across the spectrum, of course, including our dean in the Division of Nephrology, Deirdre O'Neill in Cardiology, Darren Lau in GIM, Dr. Bankar in Hematology, Grace Lam and Ria Varghese in Pulmonary Medicine. And we have seen a growth in our workforce. So, as outlined, there have been 6 academic faculty, but we've had 17 clinical academic colleagues that have joined our department in this past year, and overall 31 physicians that have joined us. So that's the good news piece, is we've continued to see some growth. The last bit that I'm going to talk about is related to administration. So those of you that have been tuning in to the presidential town halls and the dean's conversations will have seen some of this. And so I'm going to go through it very quickly. But for the rest of us, just so we're all on the same page in terms of what's happening. And so to start off with, I mean, we know we face an anticipated 33% cut to the university's Campus Alberta grant over the coming 3 years. And this is really unprecedented in terms of the level of cuts. Just for this year alone, we have to absorb nearly $110 million. And so we know that status quo is not sustainable, and there has to be something that gives. And so to that end, the university has established sort of 2 institution-wide initiatives that you've probably heard about. They've sort of termed it as University of Alberta for Tomorrow. And there's 2 initiatives under that. One that deals exclusively with administrative services, procurement, space, and facilities, termed the Service Excellence Transformation Initiative, or the SET initiative. And a lot of information has been shared about that, but the whole idea, again, is that rather than having sort of department or faculty level functions where, you need multiple sort of signatures and processes to get things going. We know that we have a very large bureaucratic institution. To try and tamper down some of that bureaucracy and simplify things as much as possible. We know that providing sort of general service at a faculty sort of dedicated to a faculty member is just too expensive. It's no longer doable, but yet a completely centralized model, we just don't have the time to get to that place. So what the SET initiative really comes to is something sort of in the middle. And again, I would strongly encourage you to go to the University of Alberta website in terms of some of the specifics that have been talked about there. The one I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is the academic restructuring, because I think that's going to impact us a little bit more. So just to that end, to identify for you what our current state is, we have 18 faculties within the University of Alberta and 66 departments and 82 institutes. So across the right, that graph sort of represents what similar institutions in Canada, US, Australia, and the UK have. So you'll see University of Toronto, for example, has 16 faculties. And we know within our faculties and departments, they're highly variable in size, organization, and division of responsibilities. And there tends to be a lot of generalists, sort of in generalist administrative support embedded within faculties and departments. And yet the work that they're doing is extremely transactional. So, it sort of adds to that layer of complexity and requiring multiple areas of sign off. So you can see where we compare to other institutions there. And so what the university has done is since the springtime, they've struck up a academic restructuring working group. We do have a Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry representative on that group. It's a very small group. And initially it was David Eisenstadt who was on that group from the Department of Oncology, but he has subsequently been replaced by Sarah Forgy from the Department of Pediatrics, who will be representing the Faculty of Medicine, not necessarily representing, but is a member from the Faculty of Medicine on this group. And so the restructuring group has very specific principles and objectives that they have developed. And you can see there that, you know, they've sort of highlighted all of that. But I thought what was really important to identify for you is timelines. So I'm going to share with you what I think is public knowledge and what I'm aware of, which is that there have been, the group has been working very hard to put together some models. They've narrowed it down to 3 models in terms of ideal efficiencies and how we can reduce sort of the complexity of how our university has evolved. On September 30th, between 1 and 2 o'clock, our president is going to be presenting some of this information. So please, please, please mark your calendars. You should have gotten an invite, and you need to be paying attention as to what's going on. In terms of having a voice in that, we do have a number of individuals within the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry that sit on the General Faculties Council. And so those individuals are going to be our direct voice, but you, or rather our indirect voice, but you can also have a direct voice. If you go to the university website, there is a place where you can actually provide your own comments. I think we all know that, you know, it's very hard for individuals outside of our faculty to understand the complexity of the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry. And I'm going to show you some slides that highlight that. But again, what I wanted to get across with this slide is that there is a timeline that's been identified. And so this information is going to be going to GFC and the board for approval towards the end of this year, that's 2020, with a view to going forward in July 2021. So that's extremely rapid timelines, but I think that speaks to the burning platform and how acute the situation is. So what about at the faculty level? So once again, those that have been to the dean's presentations, you would have seen this, is that cut in the university budget has a direct impact on the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry as depicted there. So overall, we're looking at, over the next 3 years, a $34 million cut directly to the faculty in terms of our Campus Alberta grant. Having said that, there was some signaling that went on earlier in this week at some other venues that I was at, that this may just be the start. That it's not, first of all, that no decisions are going to be reversed in terms of what the government has put forward with regards to this, but it may even be more significant than what's already been put forward, given that our province is in a significant deficit. So I think it's important that we all pay attention to this and remain engaged. So again, the faculty has responded with 2 parallel working groups similar to what the institution has. One is the budget working group, which actually has already done quite a bit of work with the NOUS group, which you may or may not have heard of. They're a consultant organization from Australia that has done some of this in Australia and in the UK, and helped us sort of put together some of the information and where we stand compared to similar universities across the country and across the world. And so, you know, this is, again, I don't want to go through the details here, but this is just to identify that a lot of the functions are transactional, and that that there are probably better ways of doing that, both in terms of where those functions exist, but also in terms of who's doing them. So, recognizing and developing sort of specialists to perform some of these functions. The faculty has also struck up an academic restructuring group, because we know, just like the number of faculties need to be pared down, the next on the list for the university is paring down the number of departments. So currently, the Faculty of Medicine has the largest number of departments, 21. And one way or the other, this is going to be looked at across the university. So our dean has taken a leadership role in this and has decided, rather than this being done to us, that we're going to go move forward with deciding how we address this ahead of the curve. So there has been a department chair service transformation working group struck with a number of department chairs, including myself. Dr. Hamelgarn and Hannah Ostergaard are co-chairing that group. And so we have a number of guiding principles that we're working under in terms of how this work is going to move forward. We've already started to do some of the hard work, and we've had at least one meeting with the chairs in terms of how we move forward with this. There are more working groups that are scheduled to take place. And just very quickly to identify to you that some of the ways that we're looking at this is with a view towards cost savings. How can we harmonize services? So this is an example of how the graduate programs currently are structured. Is there some alignment to be gained from how the graduate programs are structured? We've also gathered some information in terms of number of faculty members, number of residency programs, number of clinical academic colleagues that are represented within departments. Is there some efficiencies and alignments that can be gained through that process? So we're still in the information gathering stage, doing some initial modeling and things. And so you have a voice, no decisions have been made. And so once again, I would strongly urge that the dean is putting together a number of, they're not town halls, they're conversations with the dean. And so, stay tuned, and I would strongly encourage you to tune into some of those. I'm not going to go through this very much, just in the interest of time, to leave a little bit of time for questions, but just to say that we are still in the consultation phase. There is a model scenario that's going to be prepared and presented around mid-October to early November, with a view to a final proposal being put forward around the time of when the university proposal is put forward. And the provost and the president have signaled to the chairs and to the dean that whatever we move forward with, they will accept that, given that we've taken a leadership role in this. So how does this impact us at the departmental level? So I've already talked a little bit about some of the things, or you're already aware of, some of the things that we've taken on. We know that our budget has a pretty significant impact. It trickles down from the university to the faculty to the department. And so we've already undertaken some operational optimization that you've heard about, whether it's pagers or phone lines or, looking at space or those types of things. We're looking at optimizing revenue generation, particularly as it relates to the AMHSP, but also other revenue mechanisms. So, we had some work that was done with WCB billings. We're trying to optimize out of province billings and other things that you'll be hearing about. We have undertaken a clinical administrative optimization related to faculty FTE. So, as we've separated out our clinical administrative services and our academic administrative services, we now need to do that hard work to identify how can this be optimized while still providing value to our constituents, which is our faculty, our students, our learners, and our patients ultimately. As well as some academic administrative optimization that's taking place. And again, engaging the division directors in this, we actually had a half day to look at some of this. Recruitment planning, I have absolutely no intentions of stopping recruitment, but we have to be strategic in terms of how we move forward with recruitment. We know that on the AMHSP side, we have a new master agreement that's currently being developed. So we'll share the information on that with you at a future town hall as information becomes available. And we will soon be entering into the new cycle of ISAs, again, related to AMHSP. And then finally, we need to continue moving forward with COVID preparedness for the fall. Whether that's again related to clinical services and roster preparations, or having backups, having individuals, having facility issues sort of identified. Lots and lots of work to do. So I just wanted to sort of present that. And then finally, we are planning to move forward with a department strategic planning exercise, likely towards the fall, October, November. Adrian Wegg has kindly agreed to lead that. So again, your chance for your voice to be heard. So hopefully you will take time to participate. So the final thing I wanted to just touch on is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and something that I know has been talked about a lot, which is wellness. I am really cognizant of the fact that these are tough times, that there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of uncertainties, and that all contributing to physician burnout. I had the opportunity to look at, and I shared with the division directors in a recent article from the New England, which actually talked about the factors that seem to impact physician burnout, and what seems to have the most impact on when we see highest levels of burnout. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And there's 3 factors that seem to correlate really well. One is autonomy, and very cognizant of that, micromanagement has never resulted in individuals sort of getting that opportunity to blossom and bloom as professionals. Competence. So what does this speak to? Ensuring not only that we remain competent in our clinical research educational areas, but also those other administrative challenges that get put in front of us. So, a number of individuals have identified with Connect Care, they felt that this has made them question their competence just with all the challenges related to Connect Care. And that is another mode of stress that gets add on. And so, we are absolutely committed towards having individuals that identify areas where they're feeling lack of competence or just feeling really pressured to provide that support for them. And that's where VJ's portfolio is going to come in as well. So, please, if you identify this is an area in your immediate vicinity, then reach out to us and let us know where we can provide further support. And then lastly, relatedness. So, this speaks to this whole sort of COVID shutdown and the fact that we really don't get an opportunity to sort of meet and see each other. I mean, I took this job on while this entire clinical sciences building has been empty, and it's very hard to relate to people when you don't see them. Internet hugs aside, I've really welcomed the opportunity to have those in-person meetings. So thank you to those of you who've actually come in person, and we've managed to maintain social distancing. I look forward to my time on clinical service so I can actually see people. But find out how we can make a difference, especially in your own internal areas, to just connect, whether it's with your learners, with your colleagues, with whoever, with your administrative staff, and just find a way to make sure that you're able to maintain some sort of connectedness. Finally, 2 things that I'll just put in a plug for is to take a little bit of time for yourself. Whether, I know we're not going anywhere in these times, but even a staycation, just to unplug for a little bit of time, take time to rejuvenate and come back refreshed. And I think it's absolutely essential that people do that. And the second thing is kindness. So, you know, I've said to people that it's hard enough to deal with the things that we have to deal with, but adding that layer of you know, irritability, and I'm just as guilty of it as anyone else. But you know, just try and remember, it goes a long way. Just to put out a word of kindness. And then, of course, finally, I just need to take a minute to thank everybody. I know I've gone well over my time, but I will try and answer a couple of questions here if people can stay with me. Okay, Wendy's asked about department guidelines for backup rosters. That's going to be, yeah, Wendy, very division specific. So I can definitely speak to the division directors about that if they need guidelines with that. Yeah, Peter Senior recognized that on that chart that I showed related to funding, that the Alberta fund is the one that's gone down the most significantly. What admin support is provided by AHS for the clinical department? Yeah, so there actually is for your section chief role. AHS provides part of the funding for your administrative support. We're just in the process of sort of identifying areas where it needs to come directly through operations, because currently it comes predominantly from medical affairs. And Peter Senior and I have had lots of discussions about clinical support and where that should be embedded, whether that should be embedded, in fact, in clinical sciences building or where the physicians sit, or it should be embedded where the patients come. And so that's work that's ongoing and needs to be looked at. The paucity of women. Are there any plans to address this? Yes, absolutely. And this is why you may have noticed that there was a blank area there related to Director of EDI. Certainly all of our search and selection processes and our formal processes have already been edited to ensure that there is adequate representation. And to answer your question directly, I am very cognizant of that those pictures we put up.
Sorry, Narmin, can I just say something about that?
Sure.
This is just funny, and I think we all need to laugh at times. And I'm fine to be humble about it. When I interviewed for the position of Associate Chair of Education, Barbara Bellarmine specifically had 4 or 5 other women she interviewed, and she told me point blank, I'm only giving it to you if all the women say no. They all said no because they had like other commitments, because they were fantastic educational leaders in their own realm. But I think one of the key things that Narmin and I have talked about is sometimes women get pressured into taking these roles so we can fit a quota, and that's completely inappropriate. Whenever these positions are posted, there needs to be adequate support. But Narmin and I have talked about this, and Narmin is very passionate about this issue, but realize even Barbara, as our previous chair, was very cognizant of it. And yeah, that's what I'll say.
Thanks, Vijay. And then the last question was about the master agreement. So we're going to be having an AMHSP town hall to update on that. So once again, I apologize that I didn't leave much time for questions, but please either take your opportunity when you come meet with me or send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. I don't get inundated. I have a set time when I answer emails. It won't be next week when I go on clinical service, but when I'm able to, I do answer emails. So once again, thank you, everybody. Thanks for everything you do. And I look forward to meeting with you all. Take care.